morning. Can you hear me? Oh no, I'm going to stick this mic in my pants. In this pocket. I am really happy to be here, and people who know me know that my heart is outside my body most of the time, and so hearing Maria and Twyla speak puts me in a place where I could start crying even before I start talking. It is not many times in my life that I have been in the room with a person of Native descent who could claim their descent in the way that you claim it. And we need to honor that. As a person who has been to the land from which I was taken, I have a sense of what it feels like to lose your land, to feel landless. And so I honor you, and I envy you that you can place yourself in that way, because that is something that for Black people is a very hard thing to do in the United States, even though we have been here longer than most white people have been here. And the other thing that Naphtali didn't know this about me, but people task me with talking about something, and I'm always really committed to doing that, and I never ever do it. And so you'll get comfortable with that. And I always have a PowerPoint to try to keep me on task. I'm really committed, but we'll see how well I do with that also. But listening to Maria and Twyla, there were a couple of things that jumped out at me that I want to acknowledge. Hearing you speak your language is profound. And it has to move all of us, because we are connected to each other. All of our liberation, all of our humanity, I believe deeply in my whole body, that I cannot be free, I cannot be healthy, I cannot be whole unless every other person, whether they look like me or not, is free, healthy, and whole. But part of getting to that is we have to change the narrative in our country. Because we're a powerful country, and as we're watching elections in other places, we are infecting the world. We might like to think that the world is infected and it's trickling on us, but I fear that it is the United States, and I say we, even though I may not be the most culpable, and Maria may not be the most, and Twyla may not be the most. I refuse to not believe that I can have power in changing that. It doesn't mean that white people are free of their responsibilities, but if we are in this together, we are in this together. And so to get our way back to our roots, to reclaim our land, we have to change the narrative about this land. We have to change the narrative about how we came to be who we are, and to do that, particularly around food, we have to have a conversation about race. I am quite comfortable in the discomfort and the uncomfortable spaces that are created when we talk about race, and my goal today is to help you get a little more comfortable with that discomfort. So everybody roll your shoulders. Take a deep breath. Put your feet where they need to be, plant them on the ground, or cross them, or do whatever you need to do. And when you feel something, feel it. This is not a conversation that is a head conversation. Part of it will be, but this is a body conversation we're having today. And I'm going to leave the head conversation for the folks who are coming in the afternoon. Eric and Leah can talk about food in a way that, in their sleep probably, that I cannot. And so I'm not going to try to inundate you with facts and statistics. I am going to tell you about where we are in Springfield. Springfield is a very unique city in that it is like so many other cities that are much larger. It is like Holyoke in that it had products and mills and places to work that went away and people were displaced. And actually, I have a great aunt who was with me at the Springfield Food Policy Council event a week ago, who is 88 years old, who was born in Holyoke, who is a Black woman. And my family has been in Springfield 92 years. And so this land is my land. whether it looks like land that I may want all of it today or not. It is mine. And I understand that the remembering of who we are comes from our connection to the land. And the thing that I'm struck by is that our organizations place us. They either physically place us or ground us, or they spiritually place us or ground us, and give us a foundation to do that reclamation, and that is what GTC has done for me. And I'll tell you a little bit about GTC, but our youth are here and they can talk about it better than I can. But it is in Springfield, and it is how I came to be active in food. I had always been called to do change work, called to be a part of making things better because of who I am and how I grew up. I was born in Springfield to a single mother living in Mason Square. Mason Square used to be called Winchester Square for the older people in the room. It was the predominantly black neighborhood of Springfield. Initially, black people, when they left Holyoke, went to the North End in Springfield, which is now predominantly Puerto Rican. And then white people started creeping away from the North End and up the hill, and we followed. And then we came up the hill to Mason Square, and for a minute, because that's about how long integration lasts, people like to talk about integration, and I say it's that moment between the first black people moving in and the last white people, except for a few holdouts leaving. And that's a part of the truth that we need to tell. I don't know what the critical number is, but there is a critical number of brown people where the first 1 or 2 or 3 seem lovely. And then after that, it gets a little bit scary. And people start to flee. And disinvestment is what causes property tax bases to change. It's what leaves unkept, uncared for properties behind. It's what causes churches to relocate and move. They follow their people. It's what causes hospitals to stop having the same level of investment in community-based health care. And I mention hospitals because I'm going to talk a little bit about structural racism and hospitals. I have come to understand that the lack of access to food is a public health problem. It is a public health crisis. My friends in public health talk about social determinants of health. Any public health people in here? So for the rest of us who are not, your social determinants of health are the places where you eat, where you live, where you work, and where you play. So just think about that for a minute. And what it means to be a social determinant of health means I, for most of my life, thought I was predestined to have hypertension and diabetes because I was black. So I ate potato chips like they were going to go away if I didn't eat them all. Because I had sort of a fatalistic kind of experience about it. It was my understanding that if you were black or Latino, you were going to become diabetic or hypertensive unless you were lucky. What I now understand is that we are diabetic and hypertensive because we live in neighborhoods like mine where there are 10 McDonald's within 1.75 miles of my house and no grocery store. So of course, the children in my community are overweight. When the 2 elementary schools where I volunteer and teach school gardening, you can walk out of the front door and if you've got a good arm, throw a baseball and hit the McDonald's. But you can't buy an apple that isn't older than you are, probably. And you can't buy milk after a certain amount of time. And the milk that you do buy still doesn't have the labeling that says we don't use hormones. And we wonder why our children are obese, and there is no correlation between how much I weigh and my health. That is an important thing for people to begin to understand, because cheap food is fattening food. And so if you look at someone and say, how can they be hungry, they're large, it is because of what they have access to. So I'm going to give you a couple of definitions, because if we're going to talk about racism, not knowing who everybody is, these are my definitions that I use. There are many, many definitions. And I want to leave some time for questions, but I don't want to debate like what racism is and what. I just want to give you the framework for how I talk about it and why it's important. We have to have a conversation about race when talking about food, because if we're talking about a sustainable food system, and I know that we are because there are foodies in here and there are people of color who are yearning for sustainability. We cannot talk about sustainability without talking about equity and justice, and we can't talk about equity and justice without talking about race. So, my talk is titled Planting a Promise. I always say planting something because I am too lazy to start the PowerPoints over. So it's always a promise of something, and this one is a promise of equity. If we were at a school garden, it might be planting a promise of green. How we got here. Racism has been consciously and systematically erected. It can be undone, but can be undone only if people understand what it is, where it comes from, how it functions, and why it is perpetuated. So we have to know it, we have to name it, we need to acknowledge where it came from, and embedded in that is who created it. We have to know how it functions, and we have to know why it was perpetuated, and we are all connected to it. If you are a white person living in the United States and you can trace your lineage at all, and if you can trace it back past 100 years, you are connected to it. While maybe less than 10% of white people were slave owners, far many more were engaged in the slave trade. That is the trading and selling of people. I will say these really hard things because to really get in your head and feel it in your body about what we're talking about and why it won't go away, you cannot put shackles on people's neck. You cannot take them from their land, stack them on a boat like we stack our vegetables after we harvest them to keep them from spoiling, except there was no hay in between the people. You cannot do that, bring them here and subjugate them for 300 years and then expect in less than 150 we're all going to get over it. Unless we are intentionally doing something about it. And I don't want to get over it, I want to get above it. I want to get beyond it. I don't ever want to lose that memory because it is the memory that strengthens me. It is a memory that allows me to do my work that I really want to do during the day and go do work that I have to do, baking bread in a bakery at night to feed my family. Because I know that the work that I do during the day is my real work, and the baking of bread at night is the blessing I get to allow me to do that. So, as a social construct, race is a group of people who share similar and distinct physical characteristics. And this goes way back. It went back to speakers of a native language, a common language, national affiliations, and by the 17th century, when people began to realize there was some money to be made, it began to refer to physical traits. Race matters. We've been told that there are very specific things that relate to race. Sexual behavior, birth rates and parenting, work ethics and abilities. Those first three worked out really well during slavery because the slaves, according to those who were in charge, liked to have sex. They had lots of babies, which increased the slave population. They didn't really care that much about parenting. We weren't really cohesive family units. So it was okay to take those babies that were being made and sell them off to other plantations or put them out in the field to work because we weren't connected to it. And our work ethics were a little bit sketchy, but we had very strong abilities. And as long as we were told what to do and informed and controlled, you could get some good work out of us. The intelligence was kind of questionable. Law-abidingness, aggression, well, we know that just is something that's not possible. And I need to stop right here and honor the little boy, because they're starting to call him a man on the news, but he was 15. The age my son will be in 7 years. Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, I can't sing, so I would sing this if I could. It's a song by Sweet Honey in the Rock called Ella's Song. It's named for Ella Jo Baker. Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. If you came to this place today to talk with us about food, I want you to carry that with you today. This cannot just be a conversation about food. It has to be a conversation about who we think each other are and who is valuable in this country, because the reason that people of color suffer the most in the food system is because they are devalued. There are poor white children living in Appalachia and in West Virginia, a place where they overwhelmingly voted against their best interest because of race, in part. Those children are hungry as well, and the reason we can allow those children to be hungry is because we have made them the other in the same way that we made Native and Black and Latino people the other, and it is the same reason that 15-year-old Black boys who are honor students, and even if he were not going to school and smoking weed every day, he was 15 years old and he did not deserve to be shot in the back and killed. And so all of these things, do I not have the mic on? That's good. All of these things were in place during slavery, and they're all still in place today. Think about how we dismiss our children who are not doing well, and they're building prisons based on third-grade MCAS scores because they know they're going to be able to fill them up with Black and brown men. The biggest problem with all of this, well, there's two problems. One problem is that many people do not realize that this is not based on any kind of reality. I choose to believe, because it's the only way I can get up in the morning, that they are the smaller part of the population. The bigger problem is that more people want to pretend they haven't been affected by this, that they're really good people, that they're colorblind. You are not colorblind. I am not colorblind, and that should not be our goal. We need to be color brave. So I have a little exercise we're going to do here, and I tried this out with my husband and son. They're my test for everything. And I was going to, but when I did it with them, I showed them some pictures and I asked them to tell me what they saw. But it went downhill really rapidly, and I realized they watch way more TV than I know, because it quickly looked like a cross between the Jerry Springer Show and Family Feud. So we're going to do it differently. I'm going to ask people to close their eyes. And nobody roll your eyes. This is not mindfulness. Just close them. I have some friends here. I know how they feel about mindfulness. I think it's a beautiful thing. But I want you to close your eyes, and I'm just going to say a couple of words, and I want you to be honest. And no one has to say anything out loud. I want you to see whatever comes into your head. Poor people. Healthy people. Strong communities. Nice neighborhoods. Farmers. Criminals. Greedy people. Playgrounds. Parks. Farm workers. That's it. The question I want you to ask yourself is, what color were the people you saw when I said farmer? If you didn't see middle-aged Black woman, if you didn't see a young Black woman who's going to be talking to us later on this afternoon, if you didn't see a Latino man or a Latino woman, you are not colorblind. If you saw a white guy wearing loose jeans and overalls with a pitchfork or leaning against a haystack, that is what you've been conditioned to see. I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to skip some of the structural racism, and I'm just going to tell you what it is. It's multiple institutions. It's the way everything fits together. It's the way they interact and create incentives or disincentives for people. They are not race, gender, or class neutral, and the impact is cumulative. It is the thing, it's multi-generational, and it has created the exclusions that we all live with today. It is not an anti-discrimination paradigm. It's not about intentional discrimination because we don't even know that it's happening. Well, we know it's happening. Y'all might not know what's happening. We know it's happening because we're experiencing it. And it's not about a single institution, although the institutional behavior matters in the analysis. And we can change this narrative. What did I skip? Oh, we did the exercise. We can change the narrative, and we have to change it by identifying food system policy that directly affects women and children. So an example of that, one of the things I work hard on is school food. And there were policies passed that prevented neighborhood schools, urban center schools, from getting the same benefits that existed during the 60s based on agriculture. So there was lots of disinvestment in the 40s in public schools. Tax base, everything is built about the tax base. So if you have a poor neighborhood, you have poor schools. That's just the way it is. And lots of schools found it cheaper and easier to feed kids by giving them heat and reheat food. So the majority of kids in Springfield and Holyoke get food that comes in processed in packages, and they heat it up and give it to them, and it's TV dinners and it's garbage. In Springfield, we have been working through the Food Policy Council with Sodexo to change that. I talk to everybody, and I ask everybody for help, and because everybody always needs a black person to come sit at the table, I have lots of people to ask. And so I decided we could get more fresh food into our schools. And I understand that the way food service providers operate is that the more meals they serve, the more money they make. So I had to give them reason to make better food, to incentivize them to make more money. And we convinced them, through the Food Policy Council's helping write a USDA grant, that if they got a grant and put salad bars into schools and built school gardens, we would get kids to eat salad. They would eat salad off the salad bar, and they would get reimbursed at a higher rate. They were pretty skeptical. This was 2 years ago. We have 60 schools in Springfield. By the end of this year, we have 7 schools that do not have salad bars. All of our schools will have salad bars. We have to develop Black and Latino leadership to lead policy change. When I was doing this, I wasn't thinking about it as policy. I wanted to stop making school lunch. I have a 7-year-old, and he won't eat the school food because he's grown up with GTC. He knows what real food looks like, and I am personally vested in this, and that by the time he gets out of middle school, I will no longer have to make lunch. That is one of my driving forces. But the reality of my life is I live in Mason Square, and I know that the school food is core food for our kids. It is not extra food. Holyoke and Springfield are CEP cities, meaning that every single kid can eat. We fall under a community eligibility provision. Every single kid can eat lunch and breakfast for free because of our poverty levels. And what that means is not a money-making opportunity for Sodexo in our school district. It means we have hungry kids who need to get really good food at school, and their parents are counting on it. So we are working on a procurement policy to be written into the city's policies as well as the school district's policies. Sodexo has been incredibly responsive to us in Springfield. Sodexo in Holyoke sucks. And there's just no, and the Sodexo vice president to me said it this week, that he hopes to make a staff change. And I said, well, I hope the staff change you make will be to give the same food service director we have to Holyoke. And that will be really, really good for you, because in the last 2 years, the city of Springfield bought a warehouse and committed to building a production kitchen, which will allow the food service provider to bake everything except our whole grain bread, which now the federal government rolled back. Mr. Perdue, king of the chicken nugget, rolled that back this week. We need to really pay attention to school food. These standards got rolled back, and you can assume that the money is going to get rolled back with it. To help school districts meet those standards, they gave them a 6 cents per meal increase. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have 30,000 students, and in some of the schools they eat 3 times a day, that money adds up. And I'm sure that the money's going to follow. To develop Black and Latino leadership to lead policy change, that means that Black and Latinos who understand policy and white people who understand and have access to policy and have been making it all these years need to teach it, and they need to get out of the way. We need to do real capacity building and organizational development, and that costs money. And So if there are funders in the room, or people who have access to funders in the room, you have got to fund our organizations differently. You have got to fund them so we can pay people a living wage. We are advocating for people to get a living wage, and half of our staff don't get a living wage. GTC recently made the decision, there was a unanimous decision of the board, that we were going to pay a living wage. And we have no employees who will make less than $15 an hour. It is not where we want to be, but we just decided to do it. People are asking me, how are you going to pay for that? And I have told them I will let you know when we figure it out. But what I know is that if you wait to figure out how you're going to pay for something, it will never get done. Just decide it and then figure out how to do it. You do it in your personal lives. You did it when you went to college. Your parents did it for you. You're now running organizations and programs. We can figure that out. And we have to develop a commitment to strategies and policies to sustain these initiatives and family-led farms, because they are the places where we find ourselves, because they are the foundations of our communities, and they have to be policy changes. In the same way that we want to undo this bad structure, we have to build a new one. I was going to show you this video, but I'm not, because I'm out of time. This is about the Black Land Project. If you want to know about Black Land, I don't like to use the words of my sisters. Miss Dingett Smith is not here today, but anybody who is thinking about land, thinking about working in community, you need to go there, because Miss Dingett is doing a beautiful job of capturing the story of Black land. She has a number of wonderful things that she says to me and talks to me about quotes, and one day I was lamenting why people can't see our communities for what they are. And one of the things that she said was that, Liz, when you pull back the leaves, people think there's nothing there. But behind them, those of you who are growers, you know that really good leaf mulch is underneath. And underneath that is beautiful compost. Just waiting for a seed to grow. And that is who we are. Racism continues to perpetuate because it works. It doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for you. When Maria mentioned going to universities and getting these degrees, we need to acknowledge, and I went to some of those, and I got those degrees. The academy never stood apart from American slavery. In fact, it stood besides church and state as the third pillar of a civilization built on bondage. So use those degrees to effect some reparations. It's not all about money, it's about capacity and capital. I'm just going to skip to some pictures, because one of the things my son said, my PowerPoint was very boring because it had no pictures, and I let him pick them, and I want children to be real to you. This is Evan with his friend, one of his two best friends, Rory, and their lemonade stand at the City Soul Farmers Market. This is also a shameless pitch. We have a farmers market in Springfield, and we are looking for farmers to be in that market. This is me, I'm just showing off what I grew. 4 years ago, I grew nothing, and now I have a garden that has 12 25-foot rows. I feed my family and half of the neighborhood. The neighborhood, rather unwillingly, they just take what they need, and I'm trusting that will change, and they will come and work with me soon, but I think they enjoy reaping the benefits. This is not organic chicken. Evan loves this picture. This is when he was just 2 years old, and he's with my husband. He's adopted, and he is by birth half Dominican and half Black. And because of that, my work with Latino communities is deeply, deeply important to me. It is important to me to be able to look my son in the face and tell him I have done everything I can for all of him. But this is Evan's favorite picture. That's the only reason it's in there. This is my favorite picture. I had props in the spirit of Sean Spicer and Melissa McCarthy. I had some props. The first are these clip-on racial lenses. Naftali's going to give me 5 minutes. These go on your glasses. Many of you will remember them. You clip them on and you flip them up. Think about race like this. However you've been seeing or unseeing, you need to either flip them down or flip them up. Get yourself some metaphorical glasses. I was also going to tell you a story called The Gardener's Tale. I didn't think I was going to have enough to talk about, but clearly I do. These are 2 tomato plants that I planted when Naftali asked me to do this. And The Gardener's Tale talks about soil and what we plant in and what we don't. These tomatoes were planted in the compost that came out of my compost bin. These tomatoes were planted in the old soil that's around my house that I don't grow in because it's filled with lead, and it is for me a metaphor of what we inherit, and this is a metaphor for what we can do, because I'm cleaning up the soil. And you are cleaning up the soil. So think about these tomato plants. I'm gonna work on this one and see what happens. And this one is doing so well, I have to try to keep it alive until I can put it in the ground. And then this is my favorite prop. This is really hard work. That was a bike for food race. And so sometimes our work is so hard, but we are superheroes. And when you remember that or you forget that, you need to put on your capes, either literally or metaphorically, and get up and do your work. And the reason you need to do that is because you have people like Sarah Bankert. She is my friend whose face and heart are wide open. And I love this picture of her because I can tell she's thinking, I wish this were over. But I love that it's in front of all these things we talk about, and I love the openness of how she shows up in her work. So, and Evan loves her because she has, in her all-white neighborhood, a Black Lives Matter sign in her window. I don't take many pictures, but this is my favorite one of Evan and I. It was the first year we grew, and we were off to buy seeds. And this is the one I want you to pay attention to. This is Evan on his first day of second grade, and he is 7 years old. And when I took that picture and looked at it later, I was like, oh my gosh, he looks like a little man. And I sent it to my friends from across the country who don't get to see him growing up, and I got all sorts of remarks like, Evan's got swag. But what I see in that picture, he loves pockets. Little kids love pockets because they pick up treasures, and it's usually dirty rocks and other things they would pick up. But Evan loves pockets, and I've come to learn that he puts his hands in his pockets when he's nervous. And so people see swag, and they see girls behind him, and I see my baby who is nervous. And it terrifies me, because he is a big boy, and he's going to look like Michael Brown when he's 15 or 16. And he puts his hands in his pockets. Black men who put their hands in their pockets get shot. And so I try to keep his hands full and busy. We have to change this narrative. He asked me how old he would be when Donald Trump, he asked me how old he would be in 8 years, and I said 15, and he said, am I going to be alive when Donald Trump leaves office? And I said, oh baby, we're going to pray for 4 years. But what a question for a 7-year-old to have to make, because he knows that 15-year-old boys are not alive who look like him. That's where I'm going to leave you. This is not going to be his narrative. His narrative, my dream, is that he's going to stand on the steps of the house where the GTC kids came to recruit me. The house from which I can see the land that we bought. I can see the greenhouse that we built. And when he stands on that porch with his child, and maybe his friend Rory's child, his story won't be, my story was, when I was a kid, parents did this, everybody took care of us, we had everything we need. The story of children now is, we don't have grocery stores, we don't have trees, we don't have food growing in our communities. Evan's story to his children will be, you know, it wasn't like this when we were young. You didn't have good food in your schools like you have now. You didn't have all these berry bushes growing all over the neighborhood that anybody could eat from. You didn't have that big grocery store where GTC's produce is set aside and New Westchester produce is set aside. You didn't have any of that. But the reason you have that now, the reason we have a neighborhood where all the neighbors look different and say hi to you and care about you and know your name, is because your grandmother and Miss Ann and Mr. Neftali and all the people in this room did the work they needed to do to make it different. That is going to be the narrative that I believe we are all going to create, even if it kills you.